here on the Northwich Now programme here at Radio Northwich, as well as having introduced our Radio Northwich shopping basket feature each week, we're also looking at how hard-hit families and individuals can make savings when it comes to energy usage in the home. And to help us with this, I've got Mark Thompson, an energy saving expert, here in the Radio Northwich studio this afternoon to tell us all about how we can make savings in the home. Good afternoon, Mark.
Hi, Mike. Thanks for inviting me in.
No, it's a pleasure. Great. You're coming over loud and clear. Firstly, I wonder, before we start talking about tips and what have you, I wonder if you could tell the listeners a little bit about yourself and how you came to be offering advice as regards energy usage, if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah, so before I retired, I worked for 10 years in the energy industry, but in the public sector.
Okay.
Helping businesses develop new technologies to help us decarbonise and help us reduce our energy use. But I've also done a lot of work over the years renovating my own home and that of family members to make them more environmentally friendly, reduce their energy use and renewable technology and so on. And I've also got a thermal imaging camera, which I've used a lot locally. I did 30 surveys in February, just on a purely voluntary basis to people in the Northwich area, going into their home and showing them where they could save energy, where they were losing energy, and looking for all sorts of opportunities for them to be more comfortable in winter and actually have lower bills as well. So off the back of that, all those combinations of things, I've found myself to be something of a geek, if you like, on energy and efficiency in the home, because it's not something that people are taught. It's something I've learned a lot about in the last 10 years, and I'm trying to give the benefit of that knowledge and experience to
I think you're
people.
right. I think the assumption is always that we're clever enough to be sorting out our own energy problems at home, but the opposite is probably the truth, isn't it?
Well, it's really complicated because 50 or 60 years ago, the number of things we had in our home that used energy were very few. We had a cooker and a few light bulbs and maybe one socket in each room, and now we've got all sorts of devices, different types of cooking appliance, different types of electronic stuff, and the home has become a really complicated thing with using lots more energy and in lots of ways that aren't obviously that clear or that obvious to people, so people are unsure as to what are the most efficient things to do. And now that we've got higher and higher energy costs, people are trying to make sense of this really complicated environment and try and work out what is the best way for me to cook X, what is the best way for me to control my heating, and how can I actually get the information that I need to make some common sense decisions and practical decisions for myself. Great
that we've got you here in the studio. I bet everybody's listening very eagerly to what you're going to be telling you. Before we start talking about how to save energy, I wonder if you could just tell the listeners a little bit about the energy price cap, the energy price guarantee, is it?
Yes.
As it's now known.
Sure. So there's a little bit of confusion about this. The word energy price cap.
Yeah.
Some people think that means that their bill will be capped. It isn't a cap on your bill, it's a cap on the unit of energy, or think of it as a cap on a chunk of energy. We don't touch and feel energy. So a way of thinking about this is it's like a cap on the price of a cup of tea in a cafe.
Okay.
And if there's a cap on the price of tea in all cafes, it doesn't mean you can drink as much tea as you like. The more tea you drink, it will cost you more. So it's the per chunk of energy or per cup of tea is the best way to think about it, perhaps, as a way of thinking about the unit cost of energy is what's capped, not the price. So you can drink, the more tea you drink, the more energy you use, it will cost you more. But it's the per chunk of energy is the best way of describing it, perhaps, that is capped, not your bill. And the average bill will be something like £2,500, which means half of the homes in the country will pay less than that. Half the countries in the UK will pay more than that because it's an average expected price, but it isn't a cap on your bill.
Got you.
So the more you use, the more you'll pay. The less you use, the less you'll pay.
Got you. I bet a lot of people are. I was going to say, you've enlightened me where that's concerned, because the energy price cap does suggest that there's a maximum point to which you get. After that, you won't pay any more.
Yeah, no,
but it's really down to the usage. It's down to how much usage of electricity or gas that you actually make in the home.
Yes. The more you use, the more you'll pay. The less you use, the less you will pay. but it's a cap on the price of a chunk of energy. Think of it as a physical chunk of energy.
Right, so we still need to be wary
Yes.
with regard to our usage. Okay, thanks for making that clear. I'm sure a lot of our listeners may not have understood that as clear as you put it. You've already made it clear that you're not an expert on energy suppliers, payment system, tariffs, or anything to do with grants or government support. But what you can do, I'm sure, is tell us all how to be more savvy and how to understand and use energy.
Okay,
the floor's yours.
So back in February, I visited 30 homes in the Northwich area, looking at their energy efficiency, how they used energy in the home, how they controlled their heating, and how they lived in the home and used energy. And there were some common things that I came away with that I'd like to share with people. Some common observations. So one very, very common issue, particularly for homes that have got combi boilers, is that the temperature, the flow temperature of the water around the system is set too hot in many cases. And a central heating boiler will work more efficiently the cooler it runs. So the hotter it is, the less efficient. The cooler it is, the more efficient it is. And combi boilers should be set to run as cool as you can possibly run them while staying comfortable. So there are things that you can do yourself to adjust your boiler temperature down.
Now, can I just clarify? A combi boiler is a boiler that heats both your central heating and your hot water. Is that right?
That's right. So it's where you haven't got a hot water tank. So this is mainly applicable to homes that don't have a hot water tank. So if you're getting your hot water directly from the boiler heats up and it goes through to your tap. That is a combi boiler.
I've got one like that.
Yeah. So any boiler any boiler installed from 2005 will be of this sort of type of what they call a condensing boiler.
So the thermostatic controls that you've got on your combi boiler, what you're saying is it's better to turn them down slightly or what have you, because the boiler will then operate more efficiently.
It will.
I take it, and so it will actually use less energy.
It will use less gas, and you will have the same amount of comfort in the home most of the time. So there's some very good information on this on the Which website.
Right.
There's also a very good web page on a website called the Heating Hub. And both of them give you a very, very clear set of instructions, not only a bit more background, but a set of instructions on how you can make these changes for yourself, and also to give you confidence that your boiler is the right type and you can do it. So there's lots of information out there that's really good from particularly those two websites I've just mentioned to help you understand how you can adjust your temperatures on your boiler to reduce the temperature of your system. And the other benefit of doing that is your boiler will last longer, your pumps will last longer, your radiators will last longer because they won't corrode as much. So running the water temperature as low as you can get it while still staying comfortable is the most efficient way. So slow and cool wins the race.
Great. Okay. I've got a feeling that I'm going to ask you. I'm going to ask you to let me have, after we finish this program. I'm sure there's going to be listeners thinking, what did he say about boilers and what did he say about this?
Well, that's the benefit of being able to stream this afterwards for
if
people.
You wouldn't, if you wouldn't mind, I think what I normally do is put on a Sunday, we do a reprise of what interviewers have said as regards links and what have you. I'm just wondering whether if you could let me have a one-page document with regard to these tips, we can probably put that on our Facebook page, if you wouldn't mind, to listeners who are scrabbling for a pen and paper now in their kitchen, thinking, "Oh, I've got to write this down." Okay.
So if you Google central heating flow temperatures, you'll find this sort of information. There are two other important things to say. This isn't about reducing the thermostat on the wall in the house.
No, this is about the boiler itself.
This is about the temperature of the water going around the system, and the amount of difference it can make can be, on an average house, £80 or £90 on your bill.
Really?
Yeah.
So don't panic, folks. With a bit of luck now, I've set Mark at yet another task, apart from having done his notes to come in the programme today, to let me have a reprise of all the tips that he's giving today, so that we can put them on our Facebook page. Right, that's number one. Carry on, Mark.
So the next very common thing is there's a lot of confusion and misunderstandings out there about how thermostatic radiator valves work. So these are the large valves you see on one end of a radiator in most homes.
Got you.
Yeah. The sort of size of a pear.
Yeah. Got you. Yeah.
And people think that's just an on-off valve for a radiator. That's how people often treat them and how they use them. Those devices are actually really clever at controlling the temperature of a room. So if you set those to number 3, because they've typically got a 1 to 5 numbering system on them.
5 being the highest.
5 being the highest.
Sorry
I'll talk about 5 in a moment. If you set it to number 3, and I've measured rooms with this, I've actually proven this to myself.
Have you?
It will control the temperature in the room, obviously when your heating's on. It will control the temperature in the room to about 20 degrees. Really, really well.
So that's comfortable, is it?
That's
20
it's a
degrees
middle road for most people.
Okay.
Some people have got preferences where they need it warmer. Some people actually like it colder than that.
Yeah.
But if you always start at number 3, and then if the room isn't quite warm enough, just turn it a tiny fraction a bit more, not up to number 5. The room temperature will gradually respond, and it will move up a degree or whatever it is. So just move it small amounts. And I mentioned I'd talk about number 5. If you turn it to number 5 on your radiator valve, it's effectively no control at all of the room temperature. It's effectively saying, I want the room temperature to be as hot as the radiator can possibly make it, which actually will be probably about 28 degrees or something. So a room will overheat. What happens is people go into a room and it's not warm enough, and they crank it up to number 5, and then they walk away and the room will be overheating. So use your thermostatic radiator valves as temperature dials for the room. And if it helps, once you get to a position that you like for a room, put a little felt tip pen mark on it against the number that you like for that room. You might feel you want it to be a little bit different every day, or different weather conditions, but if somebody comes along then and changes that valve, you know where you can put it back to make sure that room doesn't overheat.
Tip.
Because I've been into many homes where I've gone into bedrooms that are at 24 degrees, and nobody wants a bedroom at 24 degrees, and the reason is someone's gone in there and they've cranked the valve up to number 5, and they've just forgotten about it in rooms. So overheating rooms is something that happens a lot, and I've seen that very, very commonly, both in the work I've done in the past.
Great advice. Carry on. This is great.
So that's the other one. So number 2. The third one is drafts. Next time we have a cold winter's day, go round, with the back of your hand round window frames and door frames and underneath your kitchen base units, and look for drafts. And I firmly believe that apart from cat flaps, which are generally pretty poor, almost every draft can be fixed. And you've got to think of a draft just with a little bit of DIY and a little bit of ingenuity. Kitchen ones are a bit harder to find, but almost every draft can be fixed. So if you've got a window that's drafty, you can put some self-adhesive foam seal around the edge, and to prevent a draft coming in on a window. UPVC doors can be adjusted, and if they can't be adjusted enough to stop a draft coming through, again, you can use foam seals. And another trick is if it isn't a windy day, use a thin piece of paper and go around the windows and the doors. And if you can get it in between the window frame and the window, then it obviously isn't sealing properly, because you can get a piece of paper so that you can do that. You can do that now. You haven't got to wait for cold weather to look for that. So drafts is something that you have to think of. If you've got a cold draft in, if you've got a pint of cold air coming in, you've got a pint of hot air going out somewhere from your house. So you are effectively heating the outside with the same amount of air. So get to grips with drafts.
And these ceiling strips, that you can pick them up in any supermarket,
you can pick them up in DIY stores.
Self-adhesive stuff that just goes round.
Yeah, always, in my view, look for the thinnest you can find and try a thin one first. Make sure the surfaces are clean. Put a thin one on first. If that isn't quite thick enough, you can double up one layer upon another, and you can buy thicker ones too. But there's a good choice of them online, and more choice online than in DIY stores. But DIY stores have got a pretty good range as well. But it's all doable. So get to grips with your drafts, because if you've got a draft that's gradually creeping into your hallway, into your lounge, your feet will feel cold.
Yeah, of course.
And usually, if your feet feel cold, you will feel cold. There's something, they're a bit of a sensitive area for most people. So drafts are
So take notice of drafts.
Take notice of drafts and really become nerdy about looking for them.
No, good advice. Number 4.
Number 4 was challenge yourself as to why you're heating all the rooms in the house that you're heating. Why do you heat the utility room? Why do people heat a hall? Why do you heat the downstairs toilet? You're only ever in these spaces for a few minutes a day. You don't actually need a hall to be warm. Okay, it's nice and welcoming when you come into a home, but actually, why spend money heating it? We mostly spend our time in the lounge or in a kitchen area or a kitchen diner and something like that. So focus yourself on the areas that you want to keep warm, and really challenge yourself about why you're heating all the rooms in the house, because you actually probably don't need to. You only need to heat the space where you are.
No, absolutely.
And the other thing to not worry about is freezing pipes, because in this modern climate, this era, it's inconceivable almost that the interior of a home will have any pipe freezing issues.
Right, okay.
You'd have to have ice on the insides of the windows. It would have to be that cold for you to have issues of freezing pipes.
I remember that when I was a lad.
Well, yeah, that's
many, many years ago.
But that was an era when we had single glazing, drafty homes,
yeah,
no
absolutely.
insulation, no heating.
No, you're absolutely right.
In a typical modern home, the chances of having a freezing pipe inside are basically zero. So do not worry about any room in any normal house freezing. It will just. All right.
And tip number 5?
Get to know your boiler controls. Or your central heating timer controls. Many homes have got a central heating timer on the wall. They're usually fiddly little menus on them. Get the manual for it. It'll be online. Just Google the brand name and the model number, and you will find it, and that might help you. Some people loathe them. I've traditionally loathed them, and some people love them. Some people get into them. But if you don't get on with your central heating timer, it has a big impact on how much energy you use and your comfort. So get to know it, overcome your hatred of it if you have it. Get the manual, Google the manual name. They're all out there somewhere. They're very, very easy to find.
Okay.
And give yourself a bit of homework to actually get to grips with it.
Or
get one of the kids to do it.
Yeah. That's probably a better thing.
For pocket money.
Probably a better thing to do.
But flex your heating system around what your day-to-day routines are.
Terrific.
Is a very simple way of in some cases saving money.
Okay. Any more tips, or are those the key 5? I know we've had a lot of listeners sending emails and texts, and in the second half of the programme, I want to put those to you. Anything else you'd like to say before we take a short break and then get into these questions that the listeners have put into the programme desk?
One of the big areas I'd like to talk about very briefly is tumble dryers. Okay. So a tumble dryer, if you use one regularly, a tumble dryer cycle, one wash load will cost you somewhere around £1.70, £1.80 every time you use it from October onwards. There are many alternatives, obviously outside if you can do so. Inside, if you vent a room and do drying on a rack. But tumble dryers are one of the most energy hungry things.
Are they?
In a home, and it costs about 10 times the amount of electricity to use a tumble dryer as it did to wash the clothes.
Wow.
Washing clothes in a washing clothes in a washing machine.
Gosh,
is a fraction of the amount of a tumble dryer. So tumble dryers are.
So if you can manage without a tumble dryer, then please do so. Okay, I'm going to take a break for a couple of minutes. We're going to give you a chance to get a drink of water and draw a breath, and then maybe we'll put to you a lot of the questions that have actually come in from the listeners. So I'm talking to Mark Thompson, who's an energy saving expert here in the Radio Northwich program. He's telling us all about how we can make savings in the home. Be back with you in just a couple of minutes.
Radio Northwich, playing decades of great music, 24 hours a day. Looking for something to do in Northwich this December? Well, Tiny Steps have got you covered. Saturday 17th December, live at the iconic Northwich Plaza, we have real Northern royalty, featuring DJ sets by Inspiral Carpets and Radio Access presenter Clint Boone, Happy Mondays funky dancer Bez, a true pioneer of the dance scene in a guy called Gerald, and a classic house keys session by the phenomenal Davos. Tickets are priced at £18 and available by visiting wegottickets.com/Tiny Steps. And the proceeds of the night are going to the wonderful Tiny Steps. What are you waiting for? See you down the front.
The Coffee House in Barons Quay isn't just another coffee shop. What sets us apart from the well-known coffee shop chains is our commitment to working with local producers, our homemade food, and our excellent customer service. For the discerning coffee drinker, we offer handcrafted blends. Unlike anything else on the high street, with seating for 100, customers will be able to enjoy a clean and contemporary decor, or sit and watch the world go by in our outdoor seating area. Come and savour the Coffee House in Barons Quay, Northwich. or check out our other stores at coffeehouseonline.co.uk. There really is something for everyone.
Get the wow factor at your special event. The Wow Shop Northwich offers one of Cheshire's largest ranges of balloons and party accessories for any occasion. For all kinds of celebrations, including weddings, anniversaries, gender reveals, baby showers, christenings, birthdays and corporate events, you can be sure of beautiful, creative displays to wow your guests. Call 01606 212 313, pop in to 15 Market Street or visit the Wow Shop on Facebook.
Radio Northwich, playing decades of great music, 24 hours a day.
Mike Cooksley's Northwich Now is brought to you in association with Warrington Auctions, offering free valuations and fortnightly auctions. Find us at www.warringtonauctions.co.uk.
Well, welcome back to the programme. I'm talking to Mark Thompson, who's an energy saving expert, and he's already been giving us a lot of tips on how to save on energy that we're using in the home. Mark, we've had a lot of listeners email us in during the week after I put an announcement up on Facebook that you were going to be on the programme. So I'm going to put some of these questions to you, if you don't mind. If you can answer them the best way. If you can't answer them, then fine. Just tell us, and you can always get back to us regard to that. First email is from Elaine. She says, and I think you've already answered this, but she says, what uses the most energy in the home?
Sure. So I've talked about heating. I talked about tumble drying. Just one more thing about tumble drying is, as an alternative to tumble drying, using electric heaters is in a room on an electrically heated rack, I should say, is also quite expensive.
Right.
And also dehumidifiers can be very expensive as alternatives. Other energy-hungry items, if you have an electric shower,
yeah,
rather than one that's taking its hot water from your tank or from your
itself.
boiler,
Yeah.
the cost of a shower is roughly 5 pence a minute.
Right.
So a 5-minute shower, 25p.
Okay.
Which is about the length most people would have a shower for.
Yeah,
Obviously,
yeah.
Kids and teenagers can be an awful lot longer than that. But as somebody, and one simple trick you can do for yourself is something that I learned when I was a caravanner. I used to do a lot of caravanning. Is when you've got limited water, wet yourself in 1 minute. Turn the shower off, do all your soap stuff, and then rinse off, and you'll use a fraction of the energy in the shower.
All right.
So that's one simple trick with showers. And the lower you can lower the temperature or the flow rate will also reduce the amount of energy you use in a shower.
Another email from James. Is it better to switch the heating off overnight or when you are out, or to leave it on a low level?
In the vast majority of cases...
A lot of people ask this question.
Yeah, in the vast majority of cases, it is best to only use it when you need it. There are some homes with some very modern boilers and modern controls where it might actually make sense for it to stay on 24 hours.
Okay.
But generally, if you've got a morning routine that means you need it on for 2 or 3 hours in the morning and 3 or 4 in the evening, stick with that. That is definitely the most efficient way of running your system.
Email from Ted. Are LED light bulbs worth it?
They absolutely are. They are fantastic technology. To give you an example, you can run a typical LED light bulb for 4 or 5 hours for a penny.
Really?
Yeah, that's all they cost to run. For
as least as that?
That's all. And if you were to run a halogen bulb or a conventional incandescent bulb, it's 10 times that. It's 10.
Really?
Yeah. So
so well worth it.
Incredibly good. They're really cheap, and the quality of them is really, really good.
So there you go, Ted. Yeah, LED light bulbs are definitely worth it.
And also, just to add one more thing to
go
that,
on, Mark.
if you have a halogen light bulb in your drawer, if you plug it in and use it, it will consume between 15 and 30 pounds worth of electricity in its life.
Wow.
So if you've got one in your drawer, throw it away, buy an LED, because you'll have a fraction of the running costs and it will last forever.
Great advice. You probably answered this one. Just email from Alex. Does turning radiators down or off in unused rooms save energy when you put the heating on?
It absolutely does. If you touch a wall, if you put your hand on the wall, it will feel cold. The reason is it's sucking heat from your hand. So you have to think of a wall as a sponge for heat. And if you heat a room, that wall, that outside wall in that unused room will sponge that heat away to the outside, even if you've got cavity wall insulation.
Okay.
So, yes, if you heat a space unnecessarily, you are definitely going to use more energy.
Right.
So keep the door shut, put a sausage dog at the bottom if you want of it.
Yeah.
If you're worried about condensation, check in on it for condensation on the windows from time to time, but I think you'll probably find if the door's shut, you won't have any issues at all.
Okay. This next email from Howard is applicable, I think, it must be for millions of people in the country. Does a phone or laptop that's fully charged still use power while it's plugged in? Could we save by unplugging them?
Modern products of this sort are really good at managing power. So most modern laptops and phones and chargers, once the phone is charged and the laptop is charged, will basically shut off and they won't be consuming.
So they won't take any more charge.
The only time they will is if you've got an old laptop with a battery that's near the end of its life.
It keeps going down
and the battery will be continually sitting there asking for power. So if you've got one of those and you know the battery's really dead, that will sit there consuming power forever.
Email from a couple of ladies here. Email from Kath. Is a microwave cheaper for heating food than a hob?
Actually, no.
Oh,
so
I thought you were going to say yes.
No, there's a lot of media going around at the moment about how microwaves are more efficient than an oven.
Correct.
And to some extent, and for some reasons, it will be for some types of meal. But I've now seen some testing done just in the last few days by somebody that is absolutely conclusive that if you want to reheat a pizza, for example, or just heat anything in the microwave, and if the alternative is you can reheat it in a pan on your hob,
right,
it is cheaper to do so on your hob.
Well,
a hob wins in grand fashion. On that one.
Right.
Unless you've got a very small item of food or a small bit of milk in the bottom of a mug.
Okay.
And then a microwave is better.
Yeah, understand that. Email from Tess. Does a full freezer use less energy than an empty one? I've heard this before.
It does, and I've actually measured this.
Really?
Yes, because I've had old freezers at home that I've been monitoring. And it does, because a freezer, when it's full, has got a big thermal mass. You've got a lot of ice in it.
Okay.
And the freezer controls work in a much calmer way, much more controlled way when they're dealing with all that big block of ice. So actually it does make a difference. It's not huge, but it does make a difference.
Okay. Two interesting ones now. And I must admit, I'm intrigued with this one. A text from Derek. How does the eco button work on my heating boiler? And is it worth using this? I have to admit, I mean, we see eco buttons on a lot of household items.
Yes. It will definitely make a difference.
What are they for? So I'm sorry to ask this. This sounds stupid. I've never really queried it. What exactly is the eco button for?
So on a boiler, it'll probably do one of two things. It will depending on the boiler, and you'll have to look at your manual.
Yeah.
It will either, or both, it will either reduce the flow temperatures of the water going around the heating system, which I talked about earlier.
Right.
So that's good.
Yeah.
Provided you are able to stay warm enough. And also there is a feature on many combi boilers where it will always keep a certain amount of water hot. It's called a preheat.
Okay.
For hot water.
Right.
It's like a little compartment with a litre or two of water in it, and it keeps that hot the whole time, so that it means that when you turn a hot tap on, the water comes through hotter more quickly.
You get instant hot water.
But that costs something like £50 a year to run.
Okay.
So that it will turn that off. So you might have longer to wait for your hot water to come through, but overall for most people it will
save money.
So eco buttons, and the same on dishwashers. I've measured my dishwasher on eco settings, and it's definitely a lot cheaper to run.
Right.
So get your manual out and have a look, see what it says.
This one, email from Manon, I don't know why. EU energy efficiency ratings on electrical devices.
Yeah.
How do they work?
So
these are stuck on the side of a new device, aren't they? And it goes from, is it A to G or something?
So this is the energy efficiency.
Yeah, what do they mean?
So they're a guide as to how energy efficient how much energy something uses. So if you go into a shop selling washing machines, for example.
Right, okay.
There's a colour scale there, which is A to F, I think it is.
Yeah.
And it will show you how efficient that item is compared to other ones in the showroom. So you can walk around the showroom and you can see washing machines that are B or washing machines that are C.
Oh, right, okay.
And obviously a washing machine is a washing machine. It's doing the same thing pretty much, but some do it more efficiently than others. So always look for one that's the higher category if you can.
Right.
It doesn't actually mean you'll pay more. I was in a showroom the other day looking specifically at this, and I was surprised you can buy the most energy efficient washing machine or dishwasher, and you're not necessarily going to pay the most expensive price at all. So It just gives you a guide as to which of the most energy efficient devices to buy.
Okay, final one. Mark, what they say, we're talking about simple steps to save on energy. Once we've heated up our homes during the day, is it worth closing the curtains on windows overnight to retain warmth in the home?
It absolutely is.
That's an interesting one.
It absolutely is.
Is it?
It's proven to be a really useful but simple thing to do. And closing doors as well, even doors that you're opening and closing, or your rooms you're going into regularly during the day.
Yeah.
It allows the radiator to do its job for a particular room, and it keeps heat from drifting away into other parts of the house. So do draw curtains at night. Really importantly, tuck them into the radiators if you can.
Okay.
Don't let them dangle on the room side of the radiator, because that will just encourage all the heat from a radiator to go into windows. So if you can tuck radiators in, absolutely do so. And another tip on top of that is if you've got full-length curtains that cover your radiator, as I have seen from time to time, so that when you draw the curtains, the radiator's the wrong side of the curtains.
You better fold them behind the radiator.
It's better just to leave the curtains open, because if you have a radiator with curtains across it, you're encouraging all of that heat from that radiator to go out the window.
All right.
So cut your curtains down.
Yeah, all right.
Don't have full-length curtains.
Get the scissors out.
It's a disaster from an energy efficiency point of view. It is. Get your scissors out.
Listen, we've got loads more. I think we're going to have you back in the studio, Mark, because we've got loads more questions here for you. And I think as we get into the cold weather, it's going to become ever so much more topical with regard to what people need to do with regard to energy saving. So just finishing up the programme, what are your, very quickly then, your top tips on saving money? Okay,
so if you haven't got a smart meter, and the in-home display you get with it, and you've just got a conventional meter, whichever of those you've got, whether you've got a smart meter or a conventional meter, get to know it, get to know what it's telling you. If you don't look at smart meters or meter data and sort of keep a log of it week to week and see what you're using, it's like driving a car and not knowing what speed you're going at, and not knowing whether you're increasing speed or you're slowing down. So get to know your smart meter or your meter data. Just make a note of readings and work out for yourself how much have I used in the last week or how much have I used in the last few days.
Advice,
is simple. Put yourself in control. Another very simple tip, if you've got UPVC windows, the hinges on them have a very complicated job to do, because they're trying to close the window and seal it at the same time. And nobody ever oils the hinge points on them. And there are 9 or 10 hinge points on each hinge. So get a tin of WD-40, spray the hinge points, all of them.
We've got UPVC.
On the top hinge and the bottom hinge.
Really?
Because if you don't, it leads to premature failure of the hinge.
And it doesn't seal the window.
And it doesn't seal at the hinge end. And from time to time I come across a window, and I found some of my own like this. So oil all your hinges. Your window will open and close much more easily. Your hinges will last longer, and they will actually the draft proofing on them will be much more effective for much longer. And then I've got one more tip, which is many people say, I've got enough loft insulation. But when you go up in the loft, some houses I've been to, I've discovered, there's a fair bit up there, but it's not very well laid. And there are hot pipes that aren't lagged, and there's gaps in the insulation. So particularly with this weather at the moment, this is ideal weather for getting up in the loft and just checking out what you've got. And if you've got junk up there, do sort it out and clean it out and put the right amount of loft insulation in if you can. This is the perfect weather for it before it's getting too cold.
Fantastic, Mark. I'm sure. I'm convinced we're going to need you to come back in the studio. What you've said it's been absolutely fantastic. Right. You did say, and I'm sorry to set you more work, you did say you'd let me have a summary of all the tips that you've given us today so I can get them onto our Facebook page over the weekend for anybody who's been unable to write down as fast as Mark talks, and he does talk at a fair old rate.
Sorry.
Where can listeners get more information, Mark?
So,
do you have a website?
I've put a website up just in the last few days.
Oh, right.
It's called Get Energy Savvy. If you put www.getenergysavvy.info, you'll find it. If you just put Get Energy Savvy into Google, you will find it, but you'll have to scroll a few screens.
Okay, all right.
And that's got a fair bit of content about there that covers the sorts of things I've talked about today. There's much more content to go on in the next few weeks. And there's also a very good Facebook group called Energy Saving Tips. Not Energy Saving Tips UK, that's a small group. There's a very good, very fast growing one called Energy Saving Tips, which has got a lot of really good, knowledgeable people on there.
Yeah.
And people are asking the sorts of questions
Right.
your viewers have asked.
Great.
And there are really knowledgeable people helping answer those questions.
Okay,
So
that's
a really good group.
Let me have those two links, and we'll put those on our Facebook page as well. I'm going to have to wrap up. We've run well over time, 3/4 of an hour. Goodness gracious. But how interesting. Mark, thank you very, very much for being so clear and concise. I'm sure our listeners have got a lot from this feature today. We'll definitely have you back in the programme a couple of months' time, once it's starting to get cold and people's minds are focused more on keeping warm but saving money as well at the same time. All I can say is thank you very, very much. Make sure you let me have that sheet of all the tips that you've talked about today. But in the meantime, take care going home, and thank you for coming on the programme.
Thank you, Mike.